Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome into Group Chat Football Live. I'm Peter Ariz alongside D Money, and this is our daily show talking college football transfers, recruiting, and everything else in between. We appreciate you all for joining us today. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel as we talk about every program, big, small, and everything in between here on Group Chat Football Live. But we'll start with Notre Dame, as we understood there would be some guys leaving after the championship game here. And the first one, Sam Pendleton, who was a starting offensive lineman for 7 games for the Fighting Irish this season, lost his starting spot after that Georgia Tech game. And it's a loaded Notre Dame unit. But this is a redshirt freshman, which looks like he has a bright future, going to have multiple years of eligibility wherever he goes. Does not have the contact tag, so no contact tag on him. Maybe makes you feel like he has potentially an idea of where he's headed. Nonetheless, Sam Pendleton has entered the transfer portal.
Yeah, I always find the no contact tag interesting, considering you're not supposed to tamper right before. So how do you make that decision that quick? It's interesting. But this is a player that's going to be highly, highly desired on the transfer portal, certainly late in the game like this, when teams may have needs that are unresolved, or they just want to add a high-quality player opportunistically. When you have these championship rosters, you do have opportunistic adds, because even though, of course, those programs are having success, you wouldn't think people would want to leave. But when you're loaded like that, there's going to be talented players that didn't get the opportunity they felt they deserved. Looking at Pendleton, 6'4", 310, not the longest player, but good size. You watch his high school stuff, incredible power. He's knocking people back. Played on a Notre Dame offensive line that was loaded, but still started 7 games as a redshirt freshman, lost his starting spot after Georgia Tech, 492 snaps, all at guard, left or right. Played 34 snaps even in the playoff when Notre Dame beat Indiana. He played 34 snaps in that game. So he's someone who's played a lot, but you bring back 5 starters to Notre Dame, Anthony Knapp, Ashton Craig, also with a lot of experience. It's a very tight room to get on. And I think he's someone who says, look, I've had my taste of playing. I want guaranteed starting spots going forward. Now that I've played a little bit, I know I can handle it, and I believe I can do that somewhere else. So you look at the no contact tag. This is a player originally from Lawsonville, North Carolina. That's on the North Carolina-Virginia border, about 2-hour drive from both Chapel Hill and Raleigh. So you're thinking about North Carolina with Bill Belichick, all the steps they've done to address their offensive line. They've already taken a ton of players, but maybe they say this guy's got multiple years. He's a hometown guy. Let him come in and compete and maybe beat out someone that we already brought in or brought back. North Carolina State, a school he looked at a ton out of high school. Could they be a factor? They need players to protect their prize quarterback, C.J. Bailey, who had a really nice freshman year and looks to be what they're building around there in North Carolina State. He had extension. That's funny saying extension, talking about high school or college kids that were in high school a year before. But he signed a big extension with North Carolina State's collective. So clearly they're building around C.J. Bailey. This would be a step to protect him, kind of circling back on a recruiting battle that you lost out of high school. Florida State, go on his Twitter. He has recent follows with Florida State's personnel department. So something to keep an eye on. But the ACC makes a lot of sense for Pendleton. You're hearing some SEC rumors as well. So either way, most likely to come south somewhere. Now it's a question of how south does he go?
And if you're Pendleton, you got to be going into wherever you're headed with some confidence. You're not really, yes, you're looking at the depth chart, because obviously you're leaving a situation at Notre Dame where that has to play a factor. It's a loaded room. You were a starter. You're not the starter anymore, but you still started 7 games over there. So you have to say, man, I was just a starter on, a top 5 unit, top 10 unit in the country. I think everyone would pretty much agree with that. I can pretty much play. I feel like I can play anywhere that I go.
And he was someone that wasn't exactly penciled in to start this year. He had a big camp, which allowed him to win a job at guard that I think was not necessarily expected. So, he's proved doubters wrong before. Now having been benched, which it's funny because if he would have not won the job and just kind of gone through that normal progression, maybe he's not in the portal. But the fact that he won it and then was benched seems like that really took a lot out of him as far as his future at Notre Dame. He had a great GIF playing Texas A&M in that opener, blew him a kiss that went pretty viral. So even if Notre Dame doesn't keep the player, they at least keep the GIF and use it in the future when offensive linemen want to make a statement
Here it is.
to other teams. There we go.
No, it's good stuff. Good stuff there from the Notre Dame media team. And I will say to you, I said at the start of the show, and we have this thing titled "The Notre Dame Transfers Have Begun." Really, only two guys right now have entered the portal: Pendleton and Deion Colsey, a receiver who's been there for 4 years, only has 21 career receptions. So we haven't exactly seen a huge exodus. I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I did say a few weeks ago I expected them to keep things mostly intact because Freeman, I really believe in the foundation that he's building there, which we saw evidence with their run this year without having, a top of the line, big time quarterback necessarily, someone who could push the ball downfield. Riley Leonard, I'm a big believer in him as a winner, but you have to feel really good about where this program is headed with Marcus Freeman.
Yeah, particularly in the offensive line. As a position, you're always going to be recruiting big-time guys. You have a track record, Joe Alt, to see what he's doing in the NFL. So that position is not something you're concerned about, either short-term or long-term. But Pendleton, man, good player. I mentioned in high school he was knocking guys around, even at Texas A&M and some of the games on their schedule here at the college level. You just see he's got natural knockback ability. He's not someone going to wrestle you down or just finesse you. He's going to strike you and knock you on your butt. So a brawler and someone that any of these ACC teams could use. And I'm sure there will be SEC interest as well. It'd be interesting to see him go to places like North Carolina State, though, given that they're trying to build something for the future. They lost a lot. They didn't really have the best offensive line this year. A guy like Pendleton could really help that program. And also, UNC, they'd probably done more to adjust their offensive line, but someone with multiple years of eligibility like that could be a building block for Coach Belichick.
Talking about Coach Belichick and the Tar Heels, they've added another quarterback to the room for next year, and that's 2025 quarterback Atari Newkirk from Norfolk, Virginia, and he joins fellow, not a 4-star because Atari Newkirk's a 3-star, but a 4-star in Bryce Baker in the 2025 class. And Baker is one of the 3 guys who stayed committed and signed with the Tar Heels after Mac Brown and Belichick, that switch was made. So when you look at Newkirk, we'll look at his huddle here in a second, but coming in as a guy who's not as heralded as Bryce Baker, who was a top 10 quarterback in this class. You look at the schools that were after Newkirk here before he made his commitment, and it was Howard, Morgan State, Elon. So not huge programs, a lot of them kind of local there, but a guy who's a winner. So you look at the combined records of both of the quarterbacks coming in here in this class: 29-1 last year. Newkirk, a 2-time state champ in Virginia. So winning traits, quarterback position, those don't always translate. But if you're Bill Belichick, you have to feel good about now bringing in 2 guys at that position who have won at a high level in high school. And you can at least say, look, we're bringing in some guys with high character, leadership abilities. Now we've got to coach them up.
Yeah, and you look at the NFL playoffs, right? We're getting ready for this weekend. Josh Allen, no Division I offers out of high school, late bloomer. So you want to catch these late bloomers when you can. You don't want to go back and look and say, okay, well, we didn't offer him because he didn't blow up till his senior year. He grew 3 inches and we just missed him. You want to get those guys late. I think that's what North Carolina is thinking here. You're talking about a guy who had a physical growth spurt, measured in a verified 6'3", which was taller than people expected, kind of watching him on his younger film. The production, unreal. 3,800 yards, 50 touchdowns, 76% passer, also ran for 603 and 6 rushing touchdowns. Look at the total yards per scrimmage and touchdowns. 4,400 scrimmage yards, 57 total touchdowns. A lefty, I think when you watch him throw, it's that little hitch that's a little unusual. Apparently, he's tightened that. It used to be a more elongated release, and it's getting tighter. That's the kind of thing that you could see if he improves that at the college level and just tightens that release. You could see significant jumps, but you see the height. He throws a nice ball there. You see him getting hit and delivering the football. So you got height, you got production and ability to process. You see a nice spiral. I don't see a cannon arm, but somebody who I'm sure is getting stronger and stronger. And as you get that release tighter, you will see more improvement there. I think this is makes sense for where North Carolina is as a program. They need numbers, right? You're talking about, Jacoby Criswell going to ETSU. You got Michael Merdinger going to Liberty, Connor Harrell going to Charlotte. So, you lost a lot of guys. Merdinger we saw in the bowl game. He's someone I watched in high school. He has some talent, but they want to restock that room. You have Baker, who played in the bowl practices and looks to be your quarterback of the future, but you really don't know until there's competition. I remember USC had a guy named Ricky Town that everybody else thought was going to be their top quarterback. Lesser known recruit in the same class, Sam Darnold, ended up beating him out, becoming the 3rd pick overall of the draft. Not saying it's going to happen here, but the point is, yeah, you may think you have your young quarterback because of the rankings, but bring in competition and let's see who really has it.
Yeah, and then, of course, you have Ryan Brown coming over from Purdue, who, has a bit of experience, could potentially be the guy this year. But it is interesting. I think there was a lot of speculation that Belichick and Lombardi, I'm throwing Lombardi in the mix there because he's been very vocal about the efforts to get talent to Chapel Hill. But there was a lot of talk that they'd be in the big-time market for one of these big-name quarterbacks. I'm sure they tried to go get a Quinn Ewers, for example, who obviously came back. Carson Beck ends up at Miami, but we heard Mateer was someone that they were very, very keen on. They threw everything at him to try to make a last minute push, but obviously he followed his offensive coordinator. So they don't end up with a big name, and they kind of have to, looks like, roll the dice with what they've got.
Yeah, look, I'm watching this guy, man. You see the mobility a little bit. He's throwing it. He does have really nice accuracy. You're seeing the ball placement. Look, this is a highlight reel, right? So you take some of it with a grain of salt, but you see the ball placement. He's throwing it away from defenders. He's hitting guys mostly in stride. It's a nice tight spiral. So yes, the release kind of gets your attention a little bit, but then you just look at the stature, you look at the ball placement, you look at how tight the ball is. You see developmental traits that can be exciting with the right play caller, and you really don't know. You have 105 scholarships coming up now with these new rules. Get as many talented arms as you want in the building. It's a position where people miss all the time, and younger guys outperform their ranking. Josh Allen was ranked even lower than Torrey here. So,
well, D, I'll say this: it to me, as a guy who is a 2025 recruit, it took way too long for a school like North Carolina to come calling. When you look at some of the other schools that are in the picture there, you see because look, with quarterback, I understand sometimes it's a size thing, sometimes it's an arm strength thing. Does he have the athletic ability? It looks like he has a lot of that stuff here. Again, not perfect in terms of the release, but to be the number 52 rated quarterback in the country and have the programs that he had after him, again, no slight to those programs, but I think he's a higher level than that. I think also goes to show you where the quarterback market is kind of at the high school level too.
Yeah, well, this is the highest ranked player that hadn't had a P4 offer before this one, right? So 247 was on him. Early is probably the wrong word, but they were on him first to say this is a power 4 type player. That's how he was rated by 247 later in this process. And then finally UNC comes in with the offer. But look, credit to Coach Belichick, Michael Lombardi, and all those guys for not just going with the wind and making their own evaluations and not worrying about, hey, we have a young quarterback here already. We just brought in a transfer. They need to upgrade the talent in that room, and then they'll find out who can really play. I applaud this move. You look at quarterback, it's such a weird position, whether you're talking about, look at the quarterbacks that are doing it in the NFL. Mahomes, all the top Texas schools, meaning in terms of the highest rated Texas schools, Texas A&M, Texas passed on Mahomes. Texas Tech, which is becoming its own kind of powerhouse now in this offseason, they benefited from that good evaluation. You look at Lamar Jackson, the Florida schools didn't recruit him. Josh Allen, nobody recruited him. Jaden Daniels was an extremely highly rated recruit out of high school, but then goes to Arizona State, and a lot of people were down on him. The Arizona State people didn't even want him, and his stock was pretty much in the bottom. So you look at the quarterbacks that are getting it done. Jalen Hurts, pretty good recruit, but ultimately, people didn't think he could throw well enough to do what he's doing now. So it's very hard to evaluate quarterbacks. Sometimes you just got to take as many as you can that have certain attributes you like and see who wins the job and who has the poise under fire to execute. Newkirk's done it in Norfolk, Virginia. Now let's see if he can do it in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
So moving along here, another program we've talked about a lot this offseason, and that is UNLV. It's been a very common theme here for Dan Mullen and his staff. Let's bring in as many former SEC type talents that we can. And this one right here in Kevon Lee, running back, is an interesting one because he played at Mississippi State last year, was at Penn State before that, has almost 1,300 yards and 7 touchdowns in his career. But just looking at the numbers, it's so weird because his best two, he's going to be playing his 6th year of college football next season. But at Penn State, year 1 and year 2, has pretty decent seasons, almost 500 yards in each of his first 2 years there. And as we know, pretty talented backfields there at Penn State. So ends up transferring, plays at Mississippi State last year, and plays in the first 4 games and does not play after that, obviously trying to preserve his red shirt there. But it's not like he left the team. And now he heads to Las Vegas to play for Dan Mullen. Could be more of a featured role for him. He's not the only running back they're bringing in this offseason. But again, just bring as many talented pieces to the table as you can if you're Dan Mullen and figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, you got a lot of guys here in this running back room. So you took a Jaden Thomas, for example, from Atlanta, Georgia, a second-team All-Mountain West player, Doak Walker Award watch list. Had a really, really good season, had a really good freshman season as well. He's going to be a player that's a focal point on this ball club. And then you go to some of the guys that have come in. Kevon Lee, we're going to talk about here, but also from Utah, one of the first guys that Dan Mullen brought in, Jalen Glover from Lakeland, Florida, somebody that we've seen since high school, a very productive back. So this backfield is now, they didn't just say we're good here. They're adding strength to strength to strength and trying to build a full unit. With Kevon Lee, someone who has a Big Ten experience, someone who has experience in Mullen's old stomping grounds there in the SEC at Mississippi State, and someone more of a power back than the other two. So I think if you're putting together a backfield, it's all about the roles. Jaden Thomas, certainly an electrifying player, a smaller player. Kevon Lee, the hammer, the big guy. Glover, sort of in the middle with a lot of experience. So it's college football 2025. You use a lot of backs. This is the power back that's going to put the cherry on top of what should be one of the best running back rooms in the Mountain West, if not the best. Now that, a pretty big name has left the conference.
Yeah, and if you're Mullen, you have to feel pretty good about stacking that room up, try to get these guys the ball in a variety of different ways. And we're already seeing some early hype for the Rebels as ESPN, believe it was Mark Schlabach's way too early top 25 had UNLV number 25 in that. So I'll pull that up real quick here. But the national buzz is starting to grow. And again, it's not a surprise based on what they did last year, but it's a whole new different show in town. Going to be new quarterback. You got 2 new quarterbacks there. Defense completely brand new. So it's not even like they're basing it off of what happened last season. It's really based on what Dan Mullen has already done in terms of building out this roster.
Yeah, improving guys. And you hear Mullen talk about some of the quarterbacks. We got a quote here from Mullen, and it was interesting. He talks about his experience calling games and how that sort of helped him evaluate in the portal. He's saying, we actually got 2 good quarterbacks with Anthony Calandria from UVA. I've seen him make a ton of plays, and Alex Orji. The greatest thing you have being at ESPN, I've gotten to watch everybody play. You sit in that room all day, and I'm watching every game in college football. I've seen them all. This is Dan Mullen. Said, I got to watch Anthony live, his ability to extend plays, scramble around, throw the ball, tremendous arm talent. We talked about all those things when we did our Calandria video. Really excited about what he brings to the table. Alex Orji, he's undefeated against Ohio State. He's won. So basically setting up that competition. But the running back room is going to be just as competitive. We talked about Kevon Lee, 225 from Clearwater, Florida, 4.8 yards a carry last year. It's just the different looks. Even at quarterback, Calandria, a scrambler, a playmaker with his arm. Orji, a runner, somebody you can bring in and design run situations. You have a lot of options here for UNLV. They've added to their passing game. They've added to their running game. Dan Mullen is someone who knows you need to be physical and run the ball in order to succeed at the highest levels. And I think this is just Mullen saying, I want the ability to play bully ball if I need to with this pickup.
And here it is. It was actually Dennis Dodd's 2 early top 25 from CBS, and he has UNLV coming in at 25. Of course, the Rebels finished the season at number 23, but this is, to me, a ranking not based on what happened last year, completely based on what we've seen in terms of the roster and knowing that Coach Mullen can really coach these guys up. Recruiting's always been the question mark with him, right? But at UNLV. He's well positioned to recruit at a much higher level comparatively, relatively to when he was at Florida, I believe, in the SEC.
But just looking at Power 4 guys he's added to this class. So Kayvon Lee, he's from Mississippi State. Denver Harris is from UTSA, but he's been in the FCC before that. You talk about
Welch, the corner, Terrence Welch was at LSU and Arizona State.
Yeah, John Lewis, linebacker from Mississippi State. Alex Orji from the Big Ten. Tayshawn Lyons was a big 4-star recruit, ended up at Utah. Jalen Lee from LSU.
And I love that quote about Orji where he said he's undefeated against Ohio State, right? So that I have a feeling he has a plan for Alex Orji in that quarterback room, in the backfield, whatever it may be.
Look, and you got Jake Pope. We talked about him. We did a long episode about Jake Pope coming from Georgia, also played Alabama, has that experience. JoJo Earl, another guy that was at Alabama at some point, wide receiver, the transfer to TCU. You got 2 tight ends from the SEC, Marquise Gums, Nick Elksnis. So this is going to look much more like a Power 4 team than a Mountain West team physically. It's about getting the most out of everybody's talent, kind of figuring out where everybody fits in, and particularly in this running back room, utilizing these 3 different players much differently because, a guy like Jaden Thomas, to me, he's much more of like a Kadarius Toney type.
Yeah.
Glover, more your standard running back, and then Lee, your hammer, which Millen did use at Florida, particularly. I think back to some of those teams, they had Deshaun Wynn. They had some big physical backs that got carries in more of a specialized role.
And to me, it's going to be about managing a lot of these egos and personalities. A lot of these guys who come in maybe got in trouble at a past school, stuff like that. And it's not even about whether or not they're going to get in trouble or not. It's about a lot of them are on their last opportunity before the NFL, and they're going to want to play, and they're going to want to play the role that they feel that they should be playing. And that's not always the case when you bring in all these guys at the same time. So figuring that part of it out is going to be, I think, the interesting part for Mullen and his staff.
Yep. No, I think that is part of it. Is you don't want to come in and kill your culture. This is not, sometimes with these teams, you're taking over for a situation that's rotten. This is a coach that got a job in a bigger conference because of his success. So you're stepping into a system that's pretty good from a culture standpoint. So you're bringing a lot of new guys, but you don't want to shake everything up because this is a system that's working. So different than some situations where you say, let's just tear the whole thing down, build it from the studs. But, there's a balance. He's got to bring in his own view and his own guys and have them battle it out. I think competition is going to be the name of the game here at UNLV, and the running back position, which has been loaded up with a lot of guys that are going to want carries. It's probably the first battleground when you talk about competitions in spring.
So the portal is slowing down a bit. You still have some guys who are grad guys who have entered the portal. We saw David Reese from Cal, who's going to be going on his 8th year of eligibility, enter the portal. He has 11 sacks the past 2 seasons. So I expect some teams to be after him as a veteran pass rusher. That was a guy I interviewed back in the day when I was still interviewing recruits before I went into the agent business. So that was crazy when I saw his name enter the portal. But yeah, that stuff's slowing down now. We have, because enrollment, I know for the University of Miami, for example, today was the last day for enrollment. And I know that's the case for a lot of schools across the country over here for the next few days, enrollment will be wrapping up. So that's pretty much going to be done. We're going to be talking a lot of spring practice, and then keep it locked here on Group Chat Football Live, because in the next day or so, we'll be dropping our early top 10 list as well. And we'll be putting our own spin to it. Of course, we've been following the transfer very closely, so our rankings might look a little bit different than some other, these people who maybe haven't been following it as closely as we have. So we'll see, what that ends up looking like. But keep it locked on Group Chat Football Live. Stay tuned for that over the next few days. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Actually, you know what? We had a question here from Brett Weeks, who I believe is a UNC fan. He says, did Daniel King sign? I didn't see his name when they released all the new players this season. That is an interesting development, because Daniel King, the offensive lineman from Troy that we spoke about the other day, I looked this up a moment ago when I saw this question, and North Carolina tweeted out, excited to welcome 21 new Tar Heels to the fold. You have the freshmen and you have the transfer. So these are the ones who are on campus now in January. And not on that list, Daniel King, right? So you see a lot of the guys that we've referenced in this video. He was not announced by the school officially. And there is a question here from Great Day Tar Heel says, what about Daniel King, spring transfer? I'm guessing so. Someone else says, where's Daniel King? So it looks like he hasn't officially signed yet, which could he have second thoughts? He had originally thought about NFL. That paperwork should have already been in now. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a spring transfer thing. Maybe it's a credit thing. I don't know what it is yet, but it is interesting.
Yeah, and he was the last guy really to commit. So is this a situation where just the timing makes him the last one to enroll? Doesn't take that long. This is over the weekend. It's now Wednesday. So interesting development there. You hope you get him on campus because he is a very talented guy, a lot of size, big part, and he's a one-year eligibility guy. So you got to get him on campus up and running so you can get the most out of him this season. He's not a long-term guy. He's a right-now guy. So hopefully that situation gets worked out and Daniel King is able to enroll at UNC.
So we'll keep you guys updated on that situation if anything changes. Thank you, Brett, for the question. Appreciate the Tar Heel fans that have been really supporting the page, man. You guys have been awesome. I know we're all excited about the Belichick era, and just like some people don't think it's going to work, but it's going to be fascinating to watch whether you think it's going to be a slam dunk or not. So we'll keep you guys updated on the King situation. Keep it locked on Group Chat Football Live as we go live daily here on our YouTube page. Hit that like, subscribe. Thank you all for joining us today. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.